So the next panel that we're going to talk about, and being here at the GSMA event, is LTE and how LTE plays in the crazy world of IoT. So that's what we're going to do now, is go straight into the next panel. And Martha, it's all yours.
All right, thank you very much, Steve. I'm Martha DeGrasse with Enterprise IoT Insights, and our panelists today are Dermot O'Shea, co-CEO of Taoglas. Joel Young is CTO of Digi International. And Bill Kramer is Senior VP for Advanced Technology Adoption at Core Wireless. So I'm going to let each one of these gentlemen introduce themselves and tell you a little bit about their companies, starting with Dermot.
Thanks, Marty. Dermot O'Shea from Taoglas. We design and manufacture antennas and RF components. So 90% of IoT hardware projects fail because of RF and antenna components that are not optimized. So we optimize those. We help customers pick, integrate, test, and deploy their RF solutions for IoT devices. We have 6 locations globally, 2 here in the US. And the reason we're on the panel here is we've done thousands of successful cellular IoT projects.
Hi everyone, Joel Young, CTO at Digi International. Digi, we've been connecting machines and things to drive business value since before it was called anything, since before M2M, since before it became IoT. But our mission has always been the same, and that is take things that have never been connected and either through an embedded module or some kind of box that an integrator might use, make it really easy to connect it and extract the information that's needed so that you can send it off to an application somewhere where you can actually obtain business value. So we're headquartered in just outside of Minneapolis, Minnesota, in the Twin Cities. We're a global company and publicly listed on the NASDAQ.
So I'm Bill Kramer. Core Wireless is based out of Atlanta, Georgia. We're a global company. We're the world's largest managed network service provider focused on IoT and M2M. Have been in the industry since 2003, so when it was M2M. And my role is in technology adoption, is to help develop programs with ecosystem partners like Digi to simplify the deployment and adoption of IoT solutions.
All right, thank you very much. So clearly there are several kinds of LTE that are driving IoT. So I think the first question for each of you is which LTE is really driving new business for you the most right now? Is it low power or is it?
Yeah, from our perspective, LTE, has in the US anyway, has been very much what's been driving our business. I think primarily because we were one of the first people to launch LTE antennas, but we see a huge, push and desire for Cat-M.
Cat-M.
So I think, there was a huge. We've been very, very busy, especially in the US labs, on customers transitioning to LTE because they have to. So they've been picking Cat4 modules and Cat1 modules for probably 80%. Like there's always that 20% that want the higher speed category LTE because they just want, more data throughput. But, for IoT, I think Cat-M is what most customers have had the hunger for. That's what they've been waiting for. That's basically what every conversation, for example, at our booth has been about for the last 2 days.
So is it mostly transitioning from Cat1 to Cat-M or new customers coming in?
I think both, I think a lot of IoT customers, for sure have been waiting for Cat-M. It's the only, it's what they've been working with the carriers in conversations. But I've seen new applications already, I suppose, use cases that were maybe not possible before because of the pricing structures or the power consumption. And I thought, you need 2 antennas for Cat4 and Cat-M's bad, but we had a customer yesterday that's going to do disposable tracker. So, buy hardware and throw it away. It's like the cigarette business model. So, I think there's use cases like that weren't possible before that will be possible with Cat-M.
Great. Okay, Joel, what do you see?
Yeah, well, I've got two answers depending upon the different markets that we play on. One of the things, but it's all LTE. I mean, one of the biggest things with LTE is we see a push away from a lot of local networks and landline connected to a cellular-based connection, and that's universal. Now, in a market like digital signage, we see a great push in Cat 1, actually, because you think about it, maybe you don't need the bandwidth of a Category 4 or Category 8, but you want just enough for digital signage. But moving down the line, we're seeing a big transition now from some of our short-range RF and a push for a short-range RF, and to mimic Dermot's answer, to LTE-M and also narrowband IoT. I mean, we're a global company, and so when the US, it's all LTE-M, trying to use the newest terminology, so all LTE-M, and for everything from monitoring all those systems, like whether it's street lights or sensors that used to be short range without gateways, right? Because they want a simplicity, and in Europe I'm seeing a big push on narrowband IoT for those same sets of applications.
Okay.
Yeah, so we see very similar things. So in our Connect product, which has really been driving most of the LTE up to this point in time, you're really talking Cat 4, Cat M type solutions. They're used for digital signage. They're used for business continuity, or a quick startup type of solution, replacing those wire lines. It's a much more economical play. The demand for M and NB is tremendous, and it, like Dermot was saying, is it's opening up a lot of new use cases. But more importantly, for those customers in North America, it really is the alternative to migrate some of those legacy 2G, 3G devices onto an LTE iterant that isn't cost prohibitive.
Okay, all right, great. Well, I'd like to ask each of you, if you could, to maybe highlight either one use case or one type of customer that particularly stands out. And then maybe if you could, at the same time, highlight one roadblock that is still getting in the way as you move forward with these.
So I'll go first.
Yeah, you're first.
I've been doing that train. So yeah, I think a customer that stands out for me has always been Big Belly Solar.
Yeah.
Because it's a great story. It's putting an IoT solution into trash cans on the street, and I think the reason they're a great story is because they proved so many people wrong. And I see them where I live in San Diego. I see them on the beaches in San Diego, and I see them in my hometown in Ireland beside the river as well. So they're a global, IoT solution provider, and they have saved cities and municipalities across the world hundreds of thousands of dollars a year just by smarter trash collection. So it's a very simple problem, and it saves so many people money and has huge efficiency. So I love that story, because you can't get any better than that.
And now they're even putting DAS antennas, so they're doing it all. Okay, so maybe not with Big Belly, but what's a roadblock that you still see?
I think it's still, for me anyway, it's certification.
Yeah.
It's time-wise, and it's a roadblock. It slows people down. For maybe the certification process is too strict for certain devices. So maybe, like, for example, a very simple IoT device that only reports if an incident happens. That has to go through the same certification requirements as a cell phone from the performance standpoint. Now, of course, there are a lot of mission critical communications that we need to do that on, but I don't think you need to apply those rules to every IoT application. So I think if we can relax the certification on certain use cases, that will help the market reach that potential quicker.
All right, great, thank you. Joel?
Yeah, so I think I won't tell you the name of the customer, but the market is street lighting, and we've been doing wirelessly enabling street lights around the world for quite a while, and we're seeing now this migration, this desire to migrate to individual cellular radios in every single street light. And it's great because it's an issue for public safety, it's an issue for simplicity, right? It's an issue for cost, effectiveness. Now you can have, if you've been in these cities where they have these kind of street light systems, right? As you move at night, your lights are dim, and as you enter, lights bright up, and local and remote lights, adjacent lights light up, and they follow you. And so it's an intelligence that's both adds energy efficiency, right, and augments public safety. And we couldn't do this anymore. And the way simplicity now works with putting a cellular radio in every single street light, instead of trying to run them through a whole cascading network, guarantees a certain level of reliability that now we can achieve, right? So I love the street lights. It's a great example of how we see IoT just continuing to evolve. I guess the problems, yes. Now, the big barriers that I see, it's still hard. If someone wants to connect and put a system together and connect it, it's still too complicated. I run into, in the world of IoT now, right, we run into people that are asked to connect things, and they don't know anything about connecting. If they make air compressors or inverters, they know inverters, air compressors. But their boss tells them, hey, we got to be in the IoT, you've got to connect this to an application halfway around the world, and they're lost, right? It's really hard. And as an industry, we have to do better at putting the pieces together in a way, and this goes with network providers all the way down to me, a manufacturer, and probably to Dermot even making antennas, all the way across, to make it simpler for customers to stitch these things together, because they don't know. They don't know, they're not experts. And that's the biggest barrier for me.
Yeah, so I talked about a couple use cases with business continuity, digital signage. I think some of the obstacles, the pricing obstacles kind of gone with the new technology, and the module costs are reducing. I think the complexity of the issue and the noise that's out there and all the alternatives is really a barrier for these customers. Sorting through which technology is best fit for which use case, because not all IoT devices are going to fit every use case. And so knowing that ecosystem and knowing the various device options, platform options, and carrier options really is a daunting, complex challenge for customers to adopt.
Yeah. And do you have a certain use case or customer type that's particularly active right now?
Probably our largest is still around fleet and asset tracking. And so that's really where the M and the NB are going to help accelerate off of the 2G and 3G and onto LTE variants, because a lot of times they can't cost justify the expense of a full LTE module. Yeah.
Okay, so you mentioned module prices coming down and that's a positive development. Do your customers also, Dermot, find that our prices getting to a point where it's more affordable for new customers? And also, what about carrier pricing? Is that getting to a place where people feel it's accessible?
Yeah, I think some of the pricing I've seen is unbelievable. For what it costs to provide those services and even have customers and just maintain them, it's unbelievable. So I think, again, it enables just way more use cases when you see how much money that it can save you in terms of time and maintenance and people costs. It's, if your business model didn't work before, even for, let's say for LTE now and the prices that they're at, I don't think your business model is going to work anyway for any wireless technology. So I think it's fantastic. I think we've all worked hard to bring the prices down, and it's really happened. And in fairness, that's because of volumes as well. The volumes have really, been coming in for everybody. If you look at the market, is going like that. Okay, it's not going the way we saw the reports, which was like unbelievable, but it's growing at 30% or so. So that's bringing in the volumes, and that's bringing all our prices down. Competition is increasing. Obviously, you pick up the Wall Street Journal today, it'll have M10, well, not anymore, but IoT in there somewhere.
Yeah.
So, everybody's looking at it, everybody wants to get into it, the big players are doing acquisitions, there's consolidation happening. So, although my boyhood dream was to be involved in a monopoly, but it's not going to happen, right? So, but it helps, it's helping the market, in fairness. The market's really taken off.
Okay, do you see the same, or do you have anything different?
Well, I'll tell you, I'm seeing a nice migration down in the cost of both the hardware and, in fact, the connectivity. What's a little disappointing for me is that we've needed that to happen in order for some of these things to take off. I'll tell you why, because most of the time when people actually, I've discovered customers actually understand their business case, understand the value of what they're getting, understand the cost of a truck roll or whatever they're preventing, the cost of the hardware and the connectivity, even if it was double what it is now, still has a wild payoff. And so sometimes we get so caught up in price reductions, which I get it, everyone likes lower prices, but we forget that the value proposition and don't spend time on understanding the value proposition in the business case, because it's been there actually. Time and time again, when you look and understand the issues, truck rolls are a great example, preventative maintenance is a great example. They already pay off without the big price reduction.
Yeah, that's a great point, because I think the total cost of ownership play here is huge. Because they're not implementing this technology for technology's sake, they're transforming their business processes, which translates to either increased revenues, reduced expense, or improved customer sat, and probably a combination of all. And those translate to real money that you're displacing, cost you're displacing in your business that more than pays for the cost of it. In terms of carrier plans, they tend to do things on a customized basis anyway. So I don't know if M and NB are going to change that at all, because it's all kind of individual case basis.
But don't you think as it scales, they'll have to stop doing it on a case-by-case basis?
It's hard to say.
Yeah.
It's hard to say. I haven't seen that yet,
right.
but definitely movement in the module device prices for sure.
Great, okay. Now what about security? Do your customers ask you about security, and if so, how do you answer them?
They don't ask us because we're on the hardware side, but yeah, I worry about security myself every day. I've seen that Equifax name around some credit reports, and I think I left my credit card in the bar last night. Actually, now that I think about it, that's even more worrying. But I've seen security has to be really addressed by this industry because it's a huge concern. More so outside of the US, I think. And I've even heard when you tell people what you do. And they're not in this industry, they kind of go, oh, I heard that you can get a device from the Home Depot, and if you return, you bring it home and it's already been hacked and stuff, and all this kind of stuff. So, and what about if my heating or alarm system's controlled? Can people hack it? But I've seen plans that us and our hardware partners, like Digi and module vendors and probably Core as well on the connection side, we had. Huge forecasts from places like Transport for London for congestion charging. But, politics prevented that because people were worried about security. Okay, now it's just a camera system. Mexico and Brazil had government insurance tracking initiatives that were huge opportunities. Both stopped because people were worried about security and the government watching them. So I think we have to allay the fears of everybody, the general public, that IoT is not going to be watching you, and IoT is not bad, and it's it's beneficial. So I think that's the kind of education that we all need to message to people in general.
Yeah, interesting.
I agree, Dermot. I mean, security is one of the first questions that I always get asked when I'm talking about a solution. It's like, oh, but is it secure, or how can I be protected? And so we actually have a whole product branding and strategy around security as a result. And it's not just about buying the right product, but it's about educating, because I find we have to educate the customers on what does security mean, what's important. Several years ago, you may have remembered a big credit card breach, not this latest one, but on a major retailer's point of sale system. You probably remember it. And it turned out that they hadn't thought about security down at the embedded device level, right? People think about security of their cloud and their systems. And so we have a program which we call Trust Fence, where things like a secure boot, so firmware is signed and authenticated so that someone can't sneak some extra little instructions into your firmware and all of a sudden hijack your system. Or providing authentication the proper way in an embedded device. So you probably don't realize this, but machines are not capable of changing their own passwords. And so if you put a password, username and password in a machine to log in, guess what? It's kind of a problem for that machine to wake up and say, oh, I need to change my password. Certificate modeling works great for that, so proper authentication and authorization. So little things like putting a trust fence around the embedded products, and so that people understand the keys to security, so it's an education and providing the technology, is what we've discovered really makes a big difference and helps alleviate those fears. You give them a toolkit and say, this is how you're protected. But it's wild. Without that, there's a natural fear, and you can understand why.
Yeah, I agree. It's an education process, and it's a holistic end-to-end approach, because you're only as secure as your weakest link, but it's also proportional to what is the information you're transporting. So how valuable is that information on the device and in the transport? Will determine how much security you need to apply. So I think the customer needs to be mindful of that. Is it corporate confidential? Is it personally identifiable information, PCI, whatever? And then there's ways to secure each step along the way, right? And so we've got network-based security options that can help control what's in the network. But honestly, I think the network is the least of the concerns. It's fairly secure. Doesn't mean it's infallible. But you got to look at the device. And so your things about secure boots and secure authentic firmware and access to APIs and securing the device, but also the cloud and the data centers. You have to look at everything and where that information is transmitting. And then if you think about IoT and some of these devices, especially as they go into M and NB, they're not going to have a lot of real estate to hold your traditional security clients. So how can you do things from the cloud to observe behaviors that might be taking place in that device and shut it down before it can do any bad things to the network?
But is security a selling point for those solutions compared to the unlicensed spectrum solutions like LoRa? I mean, or isn't the cellular network perhaps a little more secure?
From a network standpoint, it probably has more robust security, but that's not to say those other options don't have it, but there's certainly security within this licensed spectrum is going to be very strong.
Yeah. I think one of the challenges with any kind of ISM band radios out there, which our cellular ones are not, but the ISM band radios is, anybody can pretty much turn on a transmitter and go to town perfectly legally, right? Because it's free, open spectrum. Go for it, and can really shut you down, right? Without making any promises or anything on your quality of service.
And it's funny, even with interns, I see how many of them know how to do that before they know how to do anything else, so it's a real concern.
That's a good intern.
There you go.
Okay, last question. What's the most interesting thing that you've seen so far at the show? It can be something from your own company or something else that you've seen.
For me, the most interesting thing has been, I haven't had time to look at the show, but I think it's, we have a 5G demo on our booth with National Instruments. Massive MIMO antenna array prototype system. That's, it's just very interesting because it's new technology. It's very early, obviously, but it's nice to just be involved as an early adopter of that.
Yeah, I saw that demo. That's great.
Well, I tell you, I'm most excited about the availability now, both in the network and products, of which we have one, by the way, in the LTE and narrowband IoT. I think we're now at the position where we see these little intelligent end nodes that can be just plopped in and adding value almost immediately. And we've been talking about it for years, but they haven't really seen it in true play until now. And I will also say, I had a customer ask me separate from that, wanted a product with 4x4 MIMO and a Cat16 and 4x4 MIMO and Wi-Fi, and I immediately thought of Dermot because they needed 9 antennas on one product.
Verizon and AT&T.
So I haven't had much time to see the show, but I have to agree, the proliferation of M and NB options and some of the things that these device guys are thinking about in terms of easier self-installs to simplify and avoid truck rolls, the things that they're thinking about around security, both in the silicon, in the chip and module, as well as in the cloud. I think there's some pretty compelling things that are in the works.
All right, terrific. Dermot O'Shea from Taoglas, Joe Young from Digi, and Bill Kramer from Core Wireless. Thank you all so much.
Thanks, Martha.
what do you think? What's going on at the show for you? Did you see anything that was really cool?
Yeah, I know. I came and I thought, well, I guess I have to really stay in the IoT because that's my area. But actually, there's so much about, a lot of what the carriers were announcing yesterday was about IoT.
Right.
So I was
Impressed with how much that was a theme throughout the show.
I know. I just hope, I've been coming to these shows for, I don't know, what, 20, 30 years. I hope this doesn't become just an IoT and 5G show. There's so many other things that we're doing from a hardware perspective that are part of it, but it's got to expand. It's got to continue to expand into other areas.
And it will.
Yeah, I think a lot of people don't call it, they don't know IoT, they don't know what IoT
Right.
is. So I think we have to do a job, with every big organization.
Yep.
They might call it asset tracking, or they might call it, business efficiency, who knows, but we need to, get more familiar with the language that big companies use so we can explain the benefits of it.
And one of the things I think the reason that we're doing so well with this event is because apps are kind of like the last thing talked about still.
yeah.
We're the only breakout session of the whole show that's talking about applications and end users and case studies and things like that too. So I think that's it. So great. Thank you very much.
Great,
Thank you.